It is my pleasure to be here, and thanks for giving me the first opportunity to speak. It has its own good and bad aspects. Anyway, so I would like to share a small PowerPoint presentation because in these COVID times, in 5 webinars a day, everybody's used to some kind of PowerPoint presentation. It will help me keep the time frame as well as it will give some visual aid apart from my very photogenic face to the viewers. So let me just share a small PPT, and if you could just share that on the live. Hello, everybody. My name is Shashikant Joshi, and it gives me immense pleasure to be in this panel talking about Sanskrit in the modern world. I want to briefly take you through my personal Sanskrit journey, and I might be a different breed because I'm a very technical person. All my education is technical, and still I'm deeply in Sanskrit. And now that breed is increasing. So this is Hitopadesh. It's a book physically printed in 1917. And this was given by my grandfather after my class 9. And this changed my life and view to Sanskrit completely. I had studied Sanskrit from class 5 till 9, and I was pretty good. I was a very good student, and in Sanskrit I was getting 100 or 99. That is perfectly fine. But I never knew that Sanskrit existed beyond my textbooks. So this one is Hitopadesh. It's an 11th century entry-level Sanskrit book based on Panchatantra, which was a 4th century book. And what we know of these two books is only from Amar Chitragatha's animal stories for entertainment. But the purpose for these books was very different. This was to give practical wisdom, political wisdom, and governance wisdom to the 4 princes of a king. The wisdom from Panchatantra, Chanakya, Ramayana, Mahabharata, etc. is included in Hitopadesh. And the author says so, that I'm compiling this as an entry-level book for children to give them practical wisdom. There's amazing story weaving and threading and giving the essence of Niti Shastra. We think that storytelling is a modern concept to give wisdom, but it's very, very old. And what we read in Amar Chitragatha is just 5%. After my education school, I went to IIT Kharagpur. Interestingly, my elder brother had already joined IIT Kharagpur. So I had visited that institute twice. And I also joined IIT Kharagpur, not because my brother was there. I could have gone to any one of the IITs. My rank was 32. But the reason I chose Kharagpur was it was the one that resembled like an ashram. It was far away from any metro. The nearest metro was Calcutta, 3 hours. So it was an ashram setting where you could be as creative as you want. And if you got bored, then you had to create your own entertainment. And that is, I think, is very important for anybody to succeed anywhere. You should not get bored. If any person gets bored, then you will not be able to succeed in life because you're not able to create something out of that loneliness. And interestingly, now my son is also in IIT Kharagpur. Now he's in a 4th year electronics. After IIT, I went to US and I was a technical consultant. And there I realized, along with a lot of NRIs, while we are in India, we take our culture, heritage, past, and all these things for granted. But when you're outside India, you realize that, hey, you didn't pay attention, you don't know what to do, and how do you tell your children, what is this, what is that, why, all these things, right? So in that quest, I started a cultural magazine, a monthly magazine, for about a year and a half, because I had my busy work life as well. And these are just some of the issues there. I also created an audio CD. This was in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. And not much of technology there, so it was a big task to create this audio CD based on the first chapter of Hitopadesh, and the whole story was narrated in English. I also created a Hindu prayer book for the local temple because I found people either did not know the proper words for the mantra, stotra, and artis, or if they knew the words, they did not know the meaning. So this was also on the way along with this. When I returned back to India in 2007, this was an informal talk I gave at Bar Camp, Bangalore, in IIM Bangalore. And Bar Camp is a very technical get-together. And everybody had a extremely technical talk, and mine was that once you have figured out how to earn the money and don't know what to do with life, then come to my session, the lesser known aspects of Kama Sutra and Panchatantra. It was very well received. I was supposed to speak for only half an hour, and people didn't move for 2.5 hours. So that was very, very interesting. Then I started a Practical Sanskrit blog, a website, and today it has over 4 million visitors so far. Then I started a Facebook page, which I think is the largest page by a single person, not an organization. Chinmaya Mission has, I think, the largest following among Sanskrit this thing, but that is a whole mission. I'm just a person doing part-time. Inspired by the very well-received Practical Sanskrit Facebook page, I wrote a book called Attitude Shift, and it was extremely well-received. It is Sanskrit maxims for contemporary life and leadership. So it is about how you can use the wisdom in workplace, but we are all leaders. So even in life, even at home, somebody looks up to you. So as long as somebody looks up to you, you are a leader. And my latest venture has been now online classes and live sessions at learn.practicalsanskrit.com. Every Saturday 10 a.m. I have a ancient wisdom modern times session. So Sanskrit is a way of thinking. And again, here I'm going to give you just very brief things about why or what is so interesting in Sanskrit. One of the very first reasons I got involved in Sanskrit on Facebook was where I somewhere read about somebody had posted the 3 different yoga, jnana yoga, karma yoga, and bhakti yoga. And there it was like, you have the rights on your action, but not the rights on your fruits. And I think that's the biggest mistake that everybody is doing on the internet and in English writing. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. It literally means that you have control over your actions, but no control over the fruits of your actions. It's not the rights. You have the rights. You cannot escape the fruits. Because if it was not so, you could do crime and say, hey, I don't get the results of the fruit, right, of the actions. In these COVID times, there's a big dilemma in every country. Do you save the people or do you save the economy? Interestingly, Kamandaki Niti, the very beginning, like 5th or 6th shlok itself, says that the king protects the people and the prosperity is brought about by the people. So if you have to decide between protecting the people or the prosperity, you should always choose the people, because the people who brought prosperity earlier will bring it again. But if you don't have your people, who will bring the prosperity? Chanakya Sutra is about politics and governance, and it's a very long work. It's different from Arthashastra and Chanakya Niti. And very briefly, in 6 words, it covers the entire gamut of leadership and management. And I'll just very, very briefly mention that because we don't have too much time. He says, how does the society get sukha? What is the basis of sukha? The basis of sukha in the society is if everybody follows their dharma, which is duty, not religion. So if everybody does their duty, then there is sukha in the society. What is the basis of everybody doing their duty? Is artha. If everybody gets the resources to live, they get paid well, they are taking care of the needs, then they will do their duties. And what is the basis of good artha? Basically is the resources, the good economics, right? So what is the basis of good economy is the indriya rajya. Rajya is also equal to king. Then it says, what is the basis of a good king? Which is indriya jaya, which means self-control. And why is it important? Just like they say in the famous movie Sholay, if somebody can save you from Gabbar, it is Gabbar only. Who can police the police? So the king or the leader has to be indriya jaya, self-control, because nobody else can control that person, right? And what is the basis of self-control? Which is vinaya. Vinaya is not just humility, it is special training, and humility is part of that. And then it says, what is the basis of vinaya? It says vriddhopaseva, vriddha upaseva. Vriddha is one who has grown, not just in age, that is just one aspect of growing, but who has grown in a particular field. And upaseva is what you would call apprenticeship. So vriddhopaseva is apprenticeship. So when you do an apprenticeship to a great person who is grown in their field, you learn, and you also learn the vinaya. From there, you also learn the self-control because you're watching that person, right? From there comes a great leadership, from which comes great economy, from which comes everybody doing their duty, and from which comes sukha in the society. Vidur Niti is extremely about management and leadership, and I plan to offer some courses on this as well. Panchatantra and Hitopadesh, they are full of worldly wisdom and niti. This very famous Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which comes from Mahopanishad, which everybody knows and everybody hammers today. They do not realize how it can be misused as well. And in the context of Hitopadesh, there was a deer who was trapped by a jackal, and the jackal says, "I want to be your friend." And the deer's friend crow says that you guys are born enemies, you cannot be friends. And then the jackal says that, hey, this is mine, that is other. This kind of thinking is narrow-minded people, magnanimous people say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So there's nobody, mine or other like that. What this was saying was, and obviously the jackal traps the deer and tries to kill it. So what he's saying is that, there are times when people will misuse your own great thoughts against you itself. So Panchatantra and Hitopadesh are extremely important for today's youth to realize what is happening in our society and the world. The Nyaya and Yoga, they are logic and philosophy of a very high level. I mean, unless you delve into that in the textual parts of it, you will not even realize how beautiful and highly developed logical thought systems they are. I also want to give just a few examples of how powerful words are formed in Sanskrit and the way of thinking in Sanskrit. So here are just 5 words. Sansar, we usually mean that world, right? And if somebody says what's the literal meaning of world, W-O-R-L-D, there is nothing more to go for. But sansara means sarati sarati iti sansarati, sansarati iti sansara. That which keeps on slipping away or slithering away is sansara, right? By the very fact that it is sansara, there is nothing like, I will conquer the world, the world is in my fist, dunya meri mutti mein types. There is nothing. It is like sand that will slip out of your fingers. Jagat also means that which has movement, that which just keeps on moving and moving. So now imagine that the word for the universe is Jagat, and this word also is found in the Vedic times. So that means even before all this science, they had a word for the world, that which keeps moving, right? We call it today as the change is the only constant. The creation of the word itself has the concept in it. Sharir, which we think just means the body, means shirete iti shariram, that which shears, or that which ghiste hai, like in Hindi we say. So the skin keeps on rubbing off, right? So every day we are just going towards our own destruction. This body that is going towards its own destruction slowly. So why the extra attachment to that? The body is very important, because anything you can do is with the body, but it is going to go away. So one should realize that. Vyakti we think of as a person, right? But the word Vyakti means a manifestation. Abhivyakti is expression, right? So the Vyakti is the expression, an expression of what? Is of that divine principle. In the very word for a person, we say that every person is an expression of that divine. Vidhur is a widower. So a person whose wife has died. Literally, Vidhur means the one who has no access, right? Without an access, without a dhuri, is a Vidhur. So the importance of the woman and the wife in the household is there in the word itself. The man who loses his wife is without his bearings, so to speak, right? The wisdom through the story is not a new. Famous books like Our Iceberg is Melting, modern books, where penguin colony is there, and through the story of that, corporate wisdom is given to CXOs. And I used to always think that if you are a CXO, you should not need a story. I could give you a dry 5-word idea and you should be able to make sense out of it. You are a CXO, that up high. And still, they also need stories like penguins figuring out how to save their colony. Here's one little thing I want to give. Don't worry about this. I know, it's too much text. Don't worry. All I want you to focus is on the top left in the red is a shlok where the first part is all the consonant is sir, the sound is sir. Second part is only ya sound. Third part is only la sound. Fourth part is only sh sound. This is mastery at the grammar of the language. And you might say, what's the point of this? This is useless exercise. What does it even mean in today's world? There is so much more important things to do in life. And the beauty is that nowadays in computer science, they have competitions for code obfuscation, which means write a code such that nobody can figure out what the code does, but it actually runs and does something. So these kind of things are also mentioned in Sampanandaji's book itself, The Wonder That Is Sanskrit. The shloka above has ja, 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 ja sound, then ta sound, then bha and ra sounds. Only one sound per 8 consonant continuous sounds. The one below is just the the sound, nothing else. The consonant is only the. These are like amazing feats of the language, and it shows the mastery of the grammar. And one would say, why is it important? So as I was mentioning, the code obfuscation competition. This is a C code, which is a perfectly valid code. And you could look at it and say, big deal, what does it do? Is it even valid? Interestingly, this is the output of this code. And these competitions happen every year. Here is another piece of code which even programmers will not be able to make sense as to what is this. And it just prints out the map of India. This is the smallest program that actually plays a chess by the international chess rules, right? And this person, Oscar Toledo, has won it 5 times the competition. So what I'm saying is that, even today, when somebody masters the language, they create, they've created the mundane solutions, and then they show off their mastery. And such wonders are also there in Sanskrit. And very, very important in today's times is it important to learn Sanskrit? Why is it being forced down the throats of students in schools? So back in 2014, there was one news that came out, I think in November of 2014, that Sanskrit was replacing German as a third language in Kendriya Vidyalaya. I'm not going to go in the politics of it. This was a totally different thing. But just if you take that, should we be teaching Sanskrit? Should we be learning Sanskrit at all? Right? Just purely as an objective study of the matter. So let's look at it. Who will benefit if you, rather than Sanskrit, you study German or Chinese or whatever other language that you might think? So learning Chinese or German will help China or Germany, not India, right? It's not being promoted for India's interest. After 9/11 in US, there was a surge in teaching and learning foreign languages, a lot of Middle Eastern languages being learned, a lot of Asian languages being learned and taught and required, because they wanted to make sure that they could interpret, first intercept and then interpret foreign language messages going around. Learning of German or any other language is in India is not done for any Indian purpose, right? Language carries its culture with it, and culture is not genetic. The culture of this land is its history and must be taught without any narrow thinking from either side. We should not be extremely proud as one side of the politics, or extremely ashamed or shaming thing on the other side of the politics. It's not a matter of politics at all, right? Every other country teaches its past and history with great pride. English books have Shakespeare. Chinese courses will have some Chinese thinkers. French, if you learn French, then you will have some French authors in there. But sadly, in the CBSE board books in Hindi, I found that there were some stories translated from Russian. Now, as if we don't have enough literature in Hindi, and I can only speak about Hindi, I don't know other language books per se, and it might be situation in the other languages also. Now, similarly, in Sanskrit books, I found essays on television. Now, you don't want to learn Sanskrit just to say this is television and you can see from far away and all. That's not the purpose of Sanskrit, because what Sanskrit brings with it is a 3,000 plus years of wisdom, practical wisdom, philosophical, spiritual, science, and everything, language, expression, life, right? When I was studying in school, we had things like Satyam Vada Dharmam Chara and Matridevo Bhava, Pitridevo Bhava. Even if we did not understand the whole thing in class 8, we at least got exposed to the idea and the subhashits that were there. That is what drew me to the Sanskrit language, that beautiful thoughts, right? And learning other languages while learning ours as well. We can do both, right? So when a German or a Swedish person learns English, they learned it just like any other subject, right? They don't think that it is superior to their own mother tongue. Yeah, just one more language you have to learn if you have to go out of your country and do some international business or whatever. So you just pick English, just like any other subject. And all major universities in the world, they have a Sanskrit department, right? There must be some good in it that everybody is trying to learn or at least teach, right? Forget about Sanskrit. We in India are neglecting all languages, at least all Indian languages, right? Even mother tongue. Kids are not, learning it as a proper learning. Parents are not enforcing. Everybody is just talking in English, and just because you got an accent doesn't mean that your English is good. I mean, even English as a language is being neglected by students. So that's not a very good outlook towards language itself. Forget about Sanskrit. Now, will learning a language make a difference, right? So if I learn one more language, does it make any difference? Now, did France make progress by learning Mongolian or Sweden by learning Spanish? Language is just that. I mean, it's just another tool. English is important. I don't deny that. It's an important tool because you get access to all the modern knowledge instantly. You don't have to translate things. Most of the things which were originally in German, French, or Swiss, they've all been translated in English already, the scientific I'm talking about. So English is a great tool, and it's a great tool to be a world citizen, but just let it be there till there only, right? We still watch Indian movies, Hindi movies or Tamil or Bengali or whatever our mother tongue might be, and we still like Indian songs, right? If we really want to learn from other countries, we should actually pick up their work ethics, right? That would be a great thing to pick up from other countries. Language connects one to its culture. It's very, very important not to get exposed to Sanskrit. It is our culture. It is the connection to the culture. Now, is Sanskrit less of a language linguistically? I mean, is that the reason we should not learn it? This is a very vast topic, and I'm not going to take too much time here, but all I can say is that the discovery of Sanskrit by the British and the Germans and the entire Europe led to the entire area of science called linguistics, the study of language that we know today. Without that, there would have no department of linguistics in the world. Its perfection can be gauged by the fact that it does not need a key to pronunciation. Its sounds are scientifically arranged in phonetic groups of mouth locations, and there are a lot of other things out there, so I'm not going to take too much time on this one. Is Sanskrit an artificial language? That is also said in the charge against Sanskrit. It is an artificial language. The name Sanskrit itself means perfected, so it must be an artificial language. But it is not. Why? People say Panini created Sanskrit in 500 BC. Panini only described the language he heard around him in 4,000 rules in such a genius way that 2,500 years later, computer scientists used the same approach to define the computer language grammars for today. And there is no exaggeration in it. I have computer science degrees and I can vouch for that. The way the Sanskrit grammar is defined by Panini is exactly the same way, and a subset is used to define the modern computer languages. Right? Exactly the same way. Now, that's a huge intellectual achievement to come with a generative grammar just because you want to describe the language with the least amount of rules and words. And when? This is 500 BCE. The whole world was fighting petty battles for survival. And here we have some guy saying, oh, let me figure out how is this language, what are the patterns, what are the rules, how can I describe it completely in as little words and as little syllables as possible, right? It's very, very cryptic, obviously. Sanskrit is not an artificial language created by Panini because the language before Panini, what we today call as Vedic Sanskrit, is not very different from the Lokik Sanskrit. It's not like, you'll all of a sudden have different sounds and different words and different ways of forming verbs and nouns. Nothing like that. Some usage from the Vedic time has stopped after Panini, but that's pretty much it. And what is it about Sanskrit that is well suited for computers? This is a pet thing. I mean, you must have heard about Briggs' research paper in NASA, and that's why Sanskrit is the greatest language and all. People have not even understood what that is all about and who was Briggs, and very few people have actually seen the original paper, but you will find chest thumping and all over the world. But as I mentioned, the main reason for scientists, linguists, and computer and artificial intelligence scientists to be interested in Sanskrit linguistics, grammar, and works is very, very real. And it is to learn from it ways to express succinctly, learn how to represent knowledge systems, and process natural languages for translation, which is happening a lot now, right? Text to speech and Google Translate and all these things. They are even suggesting in the academic circles to use Sanskrit as the central node for translation, which means if you want to translate from language A to language B, why not first translate into Sanskrit, and then you can translate to any other language. So Sanskrit being the nodal, central node kind of thing in the translation hub. And why would they choose that, one might say? Because the very grammar of Sanskrit is almost exactly like the grammar of computer languages. And that is the best way of processing through a machine, right? All of Panini's rules are of the type A becomes B if C is true. That's how the entire grammar is defined. A becomes B if C is true, right? And that's how the computer language is also defined. And then this one is a very touchy topic, but I'm just going to touch it. Sanskrit is the language of oppression and oppressors. This is being said out in the media, and a lot of people have no answer for that. There is also a posse of bright, motivated people that will tell you that Sanskrit is a reminder and remainder of Brahminical oppression beyond compare, of the caste system and whatnot, right? So is the English language, the reminder and the remainder of British colonialism. But consider for a moment, for centuries, the whole world was going crazy trying to get to India. They discovered America trying to get to India, to do commerce with it, the only powerhouse of the world economy till 1857. You don't build empires just on spirituality and religion. You need practical wisdom, knowledge, science, and of course, the policy can be guided by spirituality. And you don't need to concoct spiritual eclectic wisdom to oppress the people, like the Sanskrit being the language of oppression or oppressors. You don't need to come up with all these fancy things just to oppress people. The West, the entire Europe, and the imperialistic powers did so with the simple sword and gun. They didn't develop some fancy thing that, hey, we are doing good for you, don't worry, we got this English language which will, emancipate. Nothing like that. Guns and swords. And if Sanskrit should be shunned because some priestly class misused their power while speaking in Sanskrit, then please don't forget that Hitler spoke German while doing what he did. And communism and suspension of liberty happened while the premier spoke Chinese. And the South and Central Americas were butchered while the cross was held as a witness, and the Middle East was bloodied while Quran was used as a guide. My point is, get over the hogwash. Sanskrit is a great language of highest order, has great wisdom in it, very thoughtfully honed over millennia. If one shuns it, the loss is not of Sanskrit, but your own. You don't need to master it. Just get exposed to its glory even a little bit. And that's what I have been trying to do since 2009, part-time, and now more full-time with practicalsanskrit.com. Thank you.